My name is Kabir Khurana. I'm an artist, a filmmaker, and a creative entrepreneur. And this is my story. If there were ever to be a ship of misfits, I am so sure I'd be the one on it. The reason I say this is because I had the most unconventional childhood. My grandfather happens to be the pioneer of Indian animation. My father also started making cartoons when he was just about 6 or 7, and then went on to become a filmmaker. And so I'm a third generation. My mother is also an animation educator. Now, obviously, I came from that family, and so they were the first to nurture and foster my creative instincts and my imagination. And at the age of 7, I started making comic strips. I started writing short stories and making these 10, 20-second long animation films. Naturally, I also felt like a fish out of water while I was in school. I just didn't fit in. And all I really wanted was to feel included and to feel a sense of belonging among my peers. I was also bullied throughout, and this is what actually made me passionate about building bridges and creating a world that would celebrate our differences. This sparked a series of community building social initiatives that I began to take throughout my life. And the objective was very simple. The objective was to kind of connect people and to create and to find common ground with the people around me. At the age of 10, I made these film strips. And these were films that were about, aliens and UFOs and dinosaurs. And it was about, sometimes the people in our textbooks, our history textbooks. Sometimes it was about climate change. And we used to actually create these film strips, and we used to fill bottles of water right up to the brim and screen it behind it. And so the image would actually enlarge. And we started, that was actually the birth of my first social initiative, which was Film Zone. And, we also eventually started to monetize these films, and we charged a rupee per screening. And I think the most amount of excitement that I got was actually to see the bullies engage in our shenanigans. I also delved further into this world of writing at that time. I think I was about 11 years old. And I remember I was a junior journalist for this newspaper called DNA Yeah for 2 consecutive years. And what was exciting was that they actually took us to a trip to Dharavi, and we got to speak to people about the water crisis there. Thereafter, I did an oral history project, where I spoke to my grandparents. That was the first time I was actually sitting down with them, getting to hear about their childhood, getting to hear experiences and anecdotes from their lives. And I wrote an article about that. It was an oral history project. And then also I got to speak to the people around me, just common people, unassuming people who had so many stories to tell, like I spoke to my house help, I spoke to my driver, and I also documented their stories. Naturally, after that, I delved even deeper into this world of writing. I started to write for other magazines. I started to write for other publications. I wrote for Teenager Today. I wrote for a local newspaper called Bandra Buzz. I wrote for an online publication, which was very popular back then, called Jalebi Ink. And right after school, at probably the age of 15 or 16, I realized that I had so many different hobbies within the creative field. And I naturally started to gravitate to this world of filmmaking because it was a culmination of all these diverse interests that I had. I also at that time did a photography workshop under this gentleman named Sanjeev Walson. He had been a travel photographer and a street photographer for Lonely Planet and Times of India. And what was interesting about him was that he didn't just teach us the craft and the technicals of photography. He didn't just teach us about aperture and shutter speed and exposure and composition. He actually taught us a lot more than that. He taught us the power of a photograph in telling a story. And each photograph was actually worth 1,000 words, right? And at that time, that I think got me ticking. And I started to, these are some of the photographs that I did in his workshop, some more street photography. And at that time, actually, I asked Sanjeev Walson to be the cinematographer of my debut film. This was at 16. And this was a film that was, in fact, about building bridges. It was about the common thread that connects all of us as human beings, which is our human instincts and our human emotions. And we spoke to people from all walks of life about common questions like love and death and happiness. And we realized that their answers were surprisingly similar. And so the question that we posed was that if our thoughts don't discriminate, then why do we? If our emotions and our human instincts are common, and that's the common thread that connects us all, then we must celebrate our diversity. This film actually got me set my career rolling. It set my ball rolling. And it went to a lot of festivals. These were just some more stills from the film. It went to a lot of festivals. It garnered a lot of awards. I got an award in Italy as well as in Ukraine. And at that time, I also started my first production house / creative agency. This was called Articulate, and the mission was to inspire social action through creative expression. So we came up with several campaign ideas. I think we were about 17. There were 5 of us. We were a group of 5, and we came up with these 3-4 campaigns that we came up with. One was, of course, Granny Tales, which was an old history project where we got to speak to our grandmothers about their stories. Another was Rap for Change, where we actually got rappers on the same platform to rap on social issues. And the third, which was our most popular, was actually a campaign called Confidently Flawed. Now, Confidently Flawed was actually a project very similar to Humans of Bombay. We had people signing up to be a part of this campaign, and they would talk about embracing their imperfections and how they had started celebrating their flaws and their weaknesses, or what society deemed as flaws, and how they had started to now embrace that. And some of these stories were very, very inspiring, and they actually, got a lot of attention on social media as well. We also came up with a campaign called Game for Change, where we created this life-size board game that was about water conservation, and we used that as an educational tool. We played with students at BMC schools, and we taught them about water conservation. Sorry. That year, we were featured on the cover of India Today magazine. It has a supplement called Simply Mumbai, and so we were among 5 other young change makers. And I was also invited that year to be the creative director of the Mumbai Art Collective. Now, the Mumbai Art Collective actually sought to create a repository of art and to document the creative process behind the creation of this art. We used to have, on a weekly basis, we actually brought the entire art world together. We actually bridged the gap between people in the art world, where there was always that slight tacit animosity that we could see. And we wanted to actually get them together and discuss ideas, to exchange thoughts, we also had slam poetry. And so it was a very exciting time for all of us. Again, we were featured in several publications. And at that time, I actually became very, very close friends with, the founder of the Mumbai Art Collective. His name was Ishan Jajodia. He was studying at Dartmouth. He was studying art history at the time. And he and I became best friends. And so we decided to start a publishing house together. This was called Bombay Kala. And we published about 11 titles under Bombay Kala. But what was most exciting is that the Hindu named us as India's youngest publishing venture. And we were featured in several publications, Midday, to Scroll, to Times of India, several others. And the way that we actually split up the work was that Ishan looked into curating these manuscripts and actually, working on the editorial side of things, whereas I was responsible for designing the covers of the books and also designing the layouts. We used the proceeds of Bombay Kala, publishing these 11 titles, to actually fund our first short film, which was a film called Religion for Dummies. Now, this was this satirical mockumentary on the state of religious affairs in our country. It was about how religious godmen actually hijack religion and make it into this business, right? And the reason why this film was special and it was different was because of the fact that it was a big experiment for all of us. We were all of 17 or 18 at the time. And we had to create these. The challenge was that we had to create 6,000 plus hand-painted frames, because this was a stop-motion film. So we had to create these life-size murals, and several of them, to actually put together this 3-minute nugget. So we shot for 10 days, and we painstakingly hand-painted every single frame. I can show you some stills. Yeah, these are some stills from the film. Again, like I said, like entirely hand-painted short film that we made, and it took us to a lot of festivals. I traveled extensively with the film. I went to a festival in Hong Kong called the Global University Film Awards. I also, went to a lot of festivals nationally as well. Sorry about that. I don't think the slides are changing. Right. So it was at this time that I actually met two of my mentors. I met Saeed Mirza, who happened to be my neighbor. He's one of the pioneers of the Indian parallel cinema movement in the 70s. And I also met K. Hariharan, who happened to be my professor of film studies at Ashoka University, where I was doing my undergrad in liberal arts. And what was interesting was that the two of them had also co-directed a film while they were at FTI called Ghashiram Kotwal, which was a Marathi film, which was a debut film of Om Puri. And so I was very fortunate to have had these two people as my mentors. K. Hariharan at the time had actually entrusted me with the golden responsibility of starting a film society on campus. And the idea of this film society was not just to screen and discuss films. It was a lot more than that. It was also to produce films on campus, right? And that is what actually was exciting for us. Today, Navrang has over 400 plus members, and every year there's a new leadership team. I also delved deeper into this world of filmmaking right after my time at Ashoka. I made a film about a cafe where you get served not what you want, but what you deserve according to your karma. I also made a film this was the one on the right, is the film that got nominated for a Filmfare. It was about, women empowerment. There were also two films that I produced and directed while I was studying, doing my master's in filmmaking in LA. So these are the two films. And I made two films which released on Disney Plus Hotstar, one which released on Amazon Prime, which is the first Indian short film to actually release on Amazon Prime. One of the most challenging projects I've done is actually a short film on the life and times of Salvador Dali, especially capturing his relationship with his partner Gala. And the reason this was exciting was because post-1930s, Salvador Dali actually began to sign her name on his paintings. He felt that without her presence in his life, he was devoid of any art, he was devoid of any creativity. She was his muse. And what was interesting about this film was that it was a live-action animation combination film. So we actually shot against chroma, and we recreated an entire animated world of Salvador Dali, that surreal animated world of Salvador Dali in CGI. What was also interesting about this film was that we used 2 or 3 cinematic techniques that hadn't been used before in an Indian short film. So one of which was called anamorphic installations, and the other was called chronophotography. So these are some more stills from the film. The film, of course, went to a lot of festivals, and I think it's the film that I'm most proud of. I also got into the world of directing commercials. I directed, last year, I actually directed a IPL campaign film for Capri Loans, which was aired on Jio Cinema, and it was a IPL campaign starring Hardik Pandya, Shubman Gill, and Kane Williamson. I also have an upcoming film with Javed Jafri, which is slated to release soon. And here are some behind the scenes stills of my journey. Right, and that leads us to one of the social initiatives that I'm most proud of. This is a community that was born out of the realization that doors to the film industry don't actually open from the inside, or don't actually open from the outside, they open from the inside. Right? And I saw the film industry as this elite exclusive club for people who were new emerging talent who were trying to find a bridge in, and I wanted to create that bridge for them. Currently, the independent film circuit has 4,000 plus members, and it has fostered innumerable collaborations. It has created opportunities for many, and it's also a platform to discuss ideas, exchange thoughts on each other's projects, each other's films, and to kind of network and collaborate amongst these peers. We also run a film club where we host weekly film screenings. And, we screen films, mainly the cult classics of world cinema, and we discuss them. It's a way of us to network and also exchange ideas. One of the things I've also started to do, I'm also a faculty of filmmaking at a college in Mumbai University. It's another way of mine to kind of give back to society and to empower these young, bright students to actually pursue their passion for storytelling and actually empower them and enable them to actually become leaders in their professions once they graduate. One of the things I tell my students is a philosophy that I embody. It is that, if you're free, your real job is to free someone else. If you have some power, your real job is to empower someone else. What's up next is, again, another socially relevant film. It's a film about a village that is actually rife with a whole lot of social evils. This is a village that is actually based on a true story about an actual village that is in South India called Maroti Chal. And this village in the 70s was rife with a whole lot of social evils like domestic violence and illicit gambling and alcoholism. And it was about this man who actually single-handedly transformed his village into being what is known as India's chess village. So he introduced chess as a new addiction to this village. So that's another project I'm actually extremely excited to be shooting this year. And to conclude, is actually a quote I really like. Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success. Right? If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. That's my speech. Thank you so much.